failure of the politically and economically inspired lipid hypothesis, this idea that eating fat, eating saturated fat, eating cholesterol are somehow causally related to heart disease. In other words, saturated fats cause heart disease. Cholesterol causes heart disease. Just doing a simple examination of the number of people who have to deal with heart disease these days, which is a leading cause of death and affects many millions of people, and the relative uselessness of statin drugs, which have now been out for probably going on 15 years. Just doing a simple examination with the number of people who are dying of heart attacks and dying of heart disease and the uselessness of statin drugs, which shut down cholesterol manufacturing, makes it pretty obvious that there's a lot more going on to cardiovascular health issues than just simply cholesterol, and that's just simply fats. And of course, if you're taking statin drugs, like all drugs, statins need to be processed and detoxified by the liver. The body considers all drugs, and statin drugs included, the body considers them to be poisons. And these drugs, as useless as they are, statin drugs, as useless as they are, come with a whole host of side effects. Not only does your body have to, not only are they useless, not only does your body have to detoxify and process these things as poisons, but then you got to deal with side effects. You got to deal with lethargy. You got to deal with muscle weakness. You got to deal with brain problems, memory problems. You even have to deal with kidney disease. You even have to deal with diabetes, potential diabetes with statin drugs. You want to prevent a heart attack? Sugar, insulin, B vitamin deficiency, mineral deficiency, cortisol, stress. These are all ways that we can control the health of our heart. Low blood oxygen. Make sure you're breathing correctly. Bile issues, liver issues, gut bacteria, the so-called microbiome. These are just a few of the control points that affect heart health that are way, way, way more important than cholesterol and fat in the diet will ever be. And of course, these control points, B vitamins, lowering your sugar and carbohydrate intake, refined carbohydrate intake, stabilizing insulin, getting on a mineral, making sure you're getting enough minerals, using the Beyond Tangy tangerine, making sure you're reducing stress. These are all control points that we control. This is so important. You should not have to interface with a doctor or a pharmacist or a Kaiser Permanente to take care of your heart, unless you're dying of a heart attack. For simple degenerative diseases, it's none of the doctor's business. It's none of the pharmacist's business. This is not something that you're going to hear from the pharmacomedical model. You're not going to see this advertised on television. There's no money in this. There's no money in nutrition. There's no money in breathing. There's no money in probiotics. There's no money in lifestyle strategies. Lobbying groups like the American Heart Association, and that's what they are, they're a lobbying group, they're not going to promote chromium, and they're not going to tell you about the sweeties, and they're not going to tell you to get vitamin B12 shots or use probiotics or eat fermented foods or relax. Activate the relaxation nervous system because they got bills to pay. There's a lot of money to be made. It's not the fat and it's not the cholesterol containing foods that are the problem. The processed fats and cholesterol, now that's different. Processed fats and heated cholesterol, that might be a problem. When we talk about the importance, the health benefits, the health importance of fatty foods, we're talking eggs, we're talking organ meats, we're talking raw dairy. We're not talking processed foods. We're not talking egg beaters. All of these substances, eggs and organ meats and liver and raw dairy, they contain lots of anti-aging elements, building elements, repair elements. It's the wrong kinds of fats. Now, that's a problem. The processed, industrially manipulated fats, those are problematic. But to lay the blame on fat and, for that matter, cholesterol in general for heart disease or any other disease is bad science. The first of the synthetic fats, the synthesized fats, and one of the first of the heavily marketed processed foods, maybe the first of the heavily marketed processed foods that were pushed on the unsuspecting, innocent American public, was Crisco, which stands for crystallized cottonseed oil. It was a hardened form of cottonseed oil. And they marketed it as a vegetable, as if cottonseed oil is a vegetable oil. I don't know that cotton is a vegetable, but that's how it was marketed. This was the first food product, the first processed food product that was really pushed on us, pushed on the American public. It was made by Procter & Gamble. It kind of ushered in the era of these high-margin, heavily processed foods that really can be connected to heart health and other health issues. It was first invented, Crisco was first invented around the time of the Civil War. It was a candle ingredient by a couple of guys named Procter and Gamble, William Procter and James Gamble. They were candle makers, and they were looking to, once electricity kicked in, they kind of read the handwriting on the wall. They saw that electricity and the light bulb were going to doom their candle making business, and they had all this synthetic, hydrogenated, thick fat. So they decided they would market it as a replacement for lard. And this was in the days when Kellogg's was beginning to become popular with his all-grain diet, and people were starting to understand that vegetables may be beneficial, eating vegetables. First Crisco marketing slogan was, "It's vegetable, it's digestible." That's what they said. Never mind that Crisco is derived from cottonseed oil. I don't know if anyone's going to call cotton a vegetable. Anyway, Crisco is good for you. This whole Crisco is good for you marketing campaign. We'll talk about that when we come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Okay, so let's see. It's vegetable. It's digestible. That was Crisco's first marketing slogan. This Crisco is good for you marketing campaign was one of the first classic successful marketing promotional campaigns for processed foods, and the first time really that a processed food was heavily marketed as being better for us than a natural food. The whole idea with Crisco is it was supposed to be better for you than animal products. This was the glory days of vegetarianism, at least the beginnings of vegetarianism, and then people were starting to get the idea that maybe animal foods were not really good for them, and people were like Kellogg's were pushing vegetable kinds of foods, grains, as being heart healthy, as being body healthy. And so Procter and Gamble, William Procter and James Gamble, introduced their synthetic product, synthetic Crisco, as a healthier alternative to cooking with animal fats. They promoted it as being more modern and more high-tech and healthier, more scientific than lard or butter. And then, in a stroke of brilliance, a marketing genius, they published this Crisco cookbook and this promotional piece on what Crisco was and how beneficial Crisco was for your health. It's actually, these days, this Crisco cookbook is considered a collector's item in the advertising world. I have a PDF file of it. I'll be glad to send it to you if you're interested. Just shoot me an email, ben@ksco.com, and give me a few days, and I'll get this out to you. It's kind of interesting, actually. It's interesting how marketing was, what marketers thought of the American public back in the early 1900s, and they haven't really changed their opinion of the American public even today. But this was one of the first times that health was marketed, and that processed products were marketed as being somehow healthy for you. Long story short, Crisco caught on. Women started using it instead of lard, and P&G, Procter & Gamble, became one of the biggest multinational corporations on the planet. Eventually, they started sponsoring radio shows, and then they started funding research and paying doctors to push their processed products and processed hydrogenated vegetable oils as healthy choices, which, of course, they're still doing. They were the ones who instigated this famous lipid hypothesis, the idea that it's fats and cholesterol in animal products that are responsible for heart disease, and they were the ones who promoted the work of this University of Minnesota heart doctor, this University of Minnesota cardiologist named Ancel Keys, one of the major forces in the history of the lipid hypothesis. In fact, the #1 proponent of the idea that eating saturated fats in animal products cause heart disease. This is all, by the way, described in the cover story in Time magazine, Eat Butter. I think it was about 3 weeks ago that came out, maybe a month ago. Right on the cover, Eat Butter, they talked about the history of this lipid hypothesis, and they talked a lot about Ancel Keys and how he kind of fudged the data and how he was funded by the Crisco people. Of course, today we know that heart disease, which was somewhat unheard of when Crisco first came out in 1911, today we know that it's risen to epidemic levels, despite the fact that we're obsessed with staying off of cholesterol and laying off of cholesterol and saturated fats and eating these processed egg beaters and Crisco-type foods. Despite that, heart disease, which was somewhat unheard of at the beginning of the 20th century, is now the leading cause of death a mere 100 years later. Clearly, Crisco and foods of these kinds are anything but cardiac friendly. And this should make sense, considering the fact that the high sugar content of the so-called Ancel Keys diet, the diet that Ancel Keys promoted, the grain and flour and refined carbohydrate diet that these folks promoted, really are the cause of heart disease. So, of course, if we shift ourselves away from animal products and from fats and start eating more breads and pastas, which is what the American Heart Association to this day still recommends, of course given the fact that sugar and insulin are intimately connected to heart problems, of course we're going to have an epidemic of heart disease. The tremendous rise in sugar consumption via sugar itself and also via grains is really the cause of heart disease, and we can thank Dr. Keyes and we can thank Procter & Gamble, when we can thank Crisco and we can thank the lipid hypothesis, as well as Big Pharma and Big Farm for that matter, because they're the ones partially who are involved in promoting the idea that we should be eating more grains and vegetable oils. And by the way, grain oil, the oils we eat are not really vegetable oils, they're more grain oils, even though they call them vegetable oil. So anyway, we can thank these guys for our epidemic of heart disease and the fact that heart disease is now the leading cause of death in this country. As we've said so many times before on this program, insulin, sugar, refined carbohydrates are connected to elevations in blood cholesterol. This is really the problem when it comes to cholesterol. It's not the cholesterol itself, it's the sugar that causes the rise in cholesterol. You lower your sugar intake, and then you won't have to make as much insulin. That alone is going to be a huge step towards reducing the likelihood of heart disease. That also means you're going to be supporting pancreatic health. Pancreas is where insulin is made, and the less insulin it has to make, the healthier it's going to be, the more resources it's going to have available for digestion. So the less sugar you eat, the lower your insulin, the healthier your pancreas is going to be, and the less cholesterol your liver will have to make. What's it going to be? Do you want to poison your liver to have it stop making cholesterol, or do you want to change your diet to have your liver stop making cholesterol? Ask your doctor. What's it going to be, doc? Do I really need a statin drug to poison my body to stop making cholesterol, or isn't there a dietary strategy that can allow me to naturally and healthfully reduce my blood cholesterol? If he doesn't know, find a doctor who does, or even better, have your doctor listen to The Bright Side, and we'll tell him. Think cholesterol, think blood sugar, think insulin, lower blood sugar, lower insulin, lower cholesterol. They're all connected. And then you got the connection between arginine, which is the amino acid that we've been talking about for the last month, and cardiovascular health issues. And arginine and cholesterol. Arginine is a building substance, and it has a major role to play in how we process sugar. It is one of the most important nutritional supplements for a diabetic. It's one of the most important nutritional supplements anybody could take for a lot of reasons, but especially because it will help us process sugar. Arginine is a major player in making the body and making cells more sensitive to insulin. That means you don't have to make as much insulin. Increasing insulin sensitivity means your body doesn't have to make as much insulin, and that's always a good thing. Arginine is a must-have nutritional supplement for diabetics and for pre-diabetics, and pretty much all of us are pre-diabetic. No matter what you hear from the doctor, no matter what your test scores say, no matter what your blood sugar tests say, and by the way, blood sugar tests are one of the silliest ways to determine whether you're having a blood sugar problem or not. You want to have your insulin checked. Now, that's different. Nobody ever tests that. Arginine owes much of its anti-aging properties, and its anti-aging properties are legendary to the fact that it helps the body process insulin and process sugar. And there's lots more, too. Argine's got tremendous anti-aging benefits, tremendous growth and building benefits, tremendous cardiovascular benefits, tremendous liver health benefits, and we will cover all of those.